Hi, thanks for watching my very first recipe video. It'll be 2 basic recipes with an Elim twist at the end.
I'm gonna cook and you're gonna eat. Won't it be just a lovely treat?
First recipe is going to be a Homestyle chili, and the second will be a Chewy cookie recipe. Okay, so let's get started with this Homestyle chili. Let's start off pretending that you've forgotten to take your hamburger out of the freezer. So you start off with your pound of hamburger. Preheat your pan on medium heat. Put a little bit of olive oil in there just to make sure things stay non-stick. You don't want it to get completely warm before you put it in there, especially with frozen meat, because otherwise you'll have oil spitting at you. Who wants that? So I've got more than a pound here just because I'm making extra. Get that browning. Periodically as that browns, you want to flip it and scrape off what's already browning and get something that you can cover it with. So as that's browning, you want to cut up some onions. So the trick is always how to cut the onions without crying. First you want to make sure that you're using a sharp knife so that you're not tearing the membrane. First you want to make a bunch of horizontal cuts in the onion. The idea is to leave it on the onion and just cut off what you need without wasting any or cutting into quarters. Next you want to cut it vertically and you have nice even portions without crying. Now that you've cut your onions, got your meat browning, let's talk about another cost-saving measure. A lot of times it saves money to buy stuff in bulk, like say tomatoes. This is the perfect to use up those tomatoes that you say you forgot in the crisper. So I like to buy them in bulk, but I don't always get to use them in time for fresh stuff like sandwiches. So they start to get all wrinkly and that kind of thing, and the first instinct is, oh no, they're gone, and they toss. This is the perfect time to crush them, dice them, put them in sauce. Then they're not going to waste. Don't cut my fingers, please. Now that it's almost completely thawed, this is when I like to add my spices. I'll start off by adding some pepper, and then of course I'll add some salt. Next I'll be using powdered onion instead of the fresh. I'll be adding the fresh later, and I'll also be using the powdered garlic as well. At this point I'll be adding some of the Frank's Red Hot sauce as well. It's basically just a cayenne mixture that adds a little nice spice to it. I just add a little bit now. I'll be adding more later when I add the rest of the ingredients. So now everything is ready to go in the stock pot. The lovely meat goes in, plop, 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 plop. Now comes the onions into the mix. We have layers, we really don't want to... Next we add the kidney beans. And then we add 2 cans, not the bird, the beans, 2 cans of brown beans. Next, a can of tomato or tomato soup. Chilli. Next, we add some canned diced tomatoes. And now we add the fresh cut tomatoes from our older tomatoes. Now I'll be adding about a tablespoon of the chili powder. Yip, 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 yip. Now you add more Frank's Red Hot sauce. You can put a little bit more or a lot more depending on how spicy you like it. And a good way to stretch out this recipe, like what I'm doing with this time, is I used 2 pounds of the hamburger instead of just 1, and I'm going to be using 2 bottles of the pasta sauce, and it kind of, you know, with the same bean ratio and that kind of thing, it kind of stretches out more bang for your buck. Last but not least, we'll be adding some bay leaves, 2 or 3 depending on their size, and that's B-A-Y, not B-A-E, people. Because if you make jokes like that, that is what makes bay leaves. So give it a nice stir to get everything all mixed in. Leave it on medium heat, stirring it frequently until it becomes hot, 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 and then reduce it to low heat and cover it and stir it for every 10 minutes until it's ready to go, usually about an hour, hour and a half. So while that's simmering, it's time to move on to part 2. the cookie recipe. Chewy. So I'll be posting the recipe for the cookies on my Tumblr. That'll be elimmatter.tumblr.com. Place that into your mixing bowl. Step 2 is the most important step. Have another sip of coffee. Then you want to cream those together until it's all evenly mixed. Okay. So now that you've got a nice even mixture there, we'll be adding in 2 eggs. For some reason I can only find my ½ teaspoon measure, so I'm using that. 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So it's very important at this stage not to whip it too much, because then if the consistency starts to change too much at this point, it goes hard and doesn't taste chewy. I don't know why that is, it's just the way this works. So when it gets to this consistency, where it just starts to lighten in color, you want to stop there, because that seems to be the magic point for chewiness. Okay, at this point you want to add the remaining ingredients. I put in my 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Mix that in till it's evenly mixed. So now I'll be putting it onto a baking sheet. I covered it in tin foil because, hey, who likes washing dishes? So then I'm just spreading it out in one big piece because I'm making squares instead of the individual cookies. But, you know, it all tastes the same. Then you want to take that and spread it out evenly on the tray. Don't worry if it doesn't go all the way to the edge. Just make sure it's even. That way, because when it heats up, it'll spread out on its own. So then we're going to place it in the oven. In the center rack. Since it's a single piece and not individual cookies, instead of the 8 to 10 minutes, we're going to be doing 15. So now we're going to transfer this to the cutting board now that it's cooled a bit. The great thing about aluminum foil is it cools quickly. I know. Cheat it. Voila. Going to cut it into squares. I need some long pieces for the bit I'm doing later. Oops. Just jumped in my mouth, I don't know what happened. And there you have it. There's two basic recipes, a chili recipe and a cookie recipe. Now we're going to do a twist on it. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to take 4 of the end pieces from the cookie squares, the ones that we left longer. We're going to place them in the bowl. So I was trying to think of what I could do for a twist with cookies and with chili. Then I got to thinking, some people put brown sugar in their chili to make it sweeter, so why not, instead of hanging a piece of bread, use a cookie? And I'm just going to take some chili and pour that over top of that. Doesn't that look good? As a final step, I'm going to grate some cheddar cheese on top. Because hey, who doesn't like cheddar cheese on their chili? Now that we have our chili and cheese, it's time to eat it. And why not place 1 more cookie square on top? Well, hope you had fun, and I know I'm going to have fun eating this. So I hope you enjoyed watching that. The chili, I actually got 24 2-scoop portions out of that recipe, so that was good. I have some freezer meals for a while. Hope you liked it. Be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks again for watching.
I'm gonna cook and you're gonna eat. Won't it be just a lovely treat?